The vast darkness of space held many secrets, and one of them was a warning that had been passed down through thousands of years. The Valorian Confederacy, a group of 5 powerful alien species that lived together in peace, had made a simple rule. Nobody was allowed to go into the Andromeda Galaxy. Everyone knew about this rule. It was written in their laws, spoken in their schools, and remembered in their history books. Many ships had tried to enter that galaxy long ago, and none of them had come back. Some ships had disappeared without any message. Others had sent strange signals before going silent forever. After so many failures, the Confederacy had decided to close the doors to Andromeda and never look back. Tajan was different from other Valorians. He worked as a probe technician, which meant he sent small machines into space to collect information about distant places. His job was safe and quiet, but Tajan was always curious about things. He wanted to know more, to see more, to understand more. Every night he would look at the data from old missions and wonder what secrets were hiding in the forbidden galaxy. One day, while he was checking old files in the database, he found something strange. There was a signal coming from deep inside the Andromeda Galaxy. It was not the kind of signal that came from dead machines or broken ships. This signal was alive. It was repeating a pattern like a heartbeat. Tajan knew he should report this to his commander, but he was afraid. If he told her about the signal, she might order him to forget about it. Instead, he went to her office and asked to speak with her in private. Commander Hayan was an older Valorian with kind eyes and a serious face. She had led many missions and knew the dangers of the galaxy well. When Tajan told her about the signal, she was quiet for a long time. "You want to go there," Hayan said. It was not a question. "Yes," Tajan answered. "Just one small ship. Just to look. We will not go far." "We will not take any chances," Hayan shook her head. "You know that is forbidden. If the council finds out, we will both lose our jobs." "But what if there is something important there?" Tajan asked. "What if someone needs help?" Hayan looked at the signal data on her screen. She could see that Tajan was right. This signal was different. Finally, she sighed and made a decision that would change everything. "We go at night," Hayan said. "Just you and me. We take a small research ship. We look at this signal, and then we come back. Nobody needs to know." 3 days later, they crossed into the Andromeda Galaxy. The ship was small, just large enough for 2 people and all the machines they needed to study space. As they moved deeper into the galaxy, they saw stars and planets that nobody had ever recorded before. The beauty of it took their breath away. When they got close to where the signal was coming from, they found something they were not ready to see. There was a planet. It was not very big and it was not very special, but it had life on it. They could see cities made of lights. They could see rivers of water and forests of green. This planet had intelligent people living on it. Tajan and Hayan had never expected this. They sent down small machines to study this new world. The machines picked up radio signals, the sound of music, and the sound of people talking. They could see that the people on this planet had created art, poetry, and music. They had wars and peace, sadness and happiness. These people who called themselves humans felt things in a way that the Confederacy had forgotten long ago. "We should go back," Hayan said quietly. "We should not be here." But before they could leave, something happened. One of the human weapons detected the alien ship. A small fighter plane, piloted by a brave young woman named Jiho, launched into the sky to see what was happening. Jiho was a lieutenant in the human military, and she had never seen anything like this ship before. It looked nothing like the planes that humans had built. It was not human. It was alien. Jiho decided to follow the ship and find out what it was doing near Earth. She climbed higher and higher into the sky, pushing her plane faster than it had ever gone before. When she got close to the alien ship, her weapon system locked onto it. Tajan inside the alien ship saw the warning. A human had found them. This was very dangerous. "We have to go now," Tajan said. But as their ship tried to escape, Jiho fired at them. The weapons from Earth were not very powerful, but they were enough to damage the alien ship. Sparks flew inside the ship. Tajan was knocked to the ground and blood came from a cut on his head. Hayan fought to control the ship, but it was falling. They could not reach the stars again. They were going to crash. The ship came down hard on a tall mountain on Earth. Snow flew everywhere as the metal ship dug into the frozen ground. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Tajan opened his eyes. He was alive, but he was hurt. Hayan was hurt too, but she was moving. They looked at each other in the broken ship and knew that their lives had changed forever. Outside, Jiho landed her plane nearby and ran toward the smoking ship. She had a gun in her hand, but her heart was beating fast. She did not know what was going to happen. She did not know that she was about to meet beings from another world. She did not know that this moment would change everything for humanity and for the entire galaxy. The door of the alien ship opened slowly. Smoke came out, and then two creatures that were nothing like humans stepped out into the snow. Jiho raised her gun, but she did not shoot. She wanted to know what they were. She wanted to know where they came from, and somewhere deep in her mind she knew that the world she had always known was about to become much bigger and much more complicated than she had ever imagined. Dr. Minjae had always believed that science could answer any question. He spent his days at the research center studying the stars and trying to understand the mysteries of the universe. He was eating lunch when the alarm came. Military planes had been scrambled on the other side of the mountain. Something strange had happened in the sky. As a scientist, Minjae wanted to know what it was. He decided to take his equipment and drive to the location. He did not know that this decision would make him part of the most important discovery in human history. When Minjae arrived at the crash site, Jiho was still standing in front of the alien ship with her gun. She saw the scientist and almost shot him, but she recognized him from the television news. He was famous for talking about space and the possibility of life on other planets. She lowered her gun and let him pass. "What happened here?" Minjae asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "I do not know," Jiho answered. "They came from the sky. I shot at them and they crashed." Minjae walked toward the ship slowly. Inside, he could see two beings that were not human. They had skin that looked like it was made of light, and their eyes were large and full of intelligence. One of them was hurt and bleeding. Minjae knew that this moment would change everything forever. "I am a doctor," Minjae said in a calm voice, holding up his hands to show he was not a threat. "I want to help you." Taejun and Hyun looked at each other. They did not understand human language perfectly, but they had learned some words from their machines. They understood enough to know that Minjae wanted to help. Taejun, the one who was hurt, nodded slowly. Over the next few days, Minjae hid the two aliens in a secret location far from the city. He gave them food and medicine. As Taejun healed, he was able to teach Minjae the language of the Confederacy. Slowly, they began to communicate. Taejun told Minjae about the galaxy, about the 5 species that lived together, about the technology that humans had never dreamed of. But there was something else. Something darker. Taejun told Minjae about the Nexus. Long ago, Taejun explained, there was a species that lived in Andromeda. They were not like us. They did not think as individuals. They thought as one mind connected together. They grew and grew, taking over everything. They ate entire planets. They destroyed civilizations that had existed for millions of years. The Confederacy fought them, but we could not win, so we left. We sealed off the galaxy and promised never to return. We hoped the Nexus would die from hunger. We hoped we would never have to fight them again. But, Minjae asked. He could hear that there was more to the story. But the signals are starting again, Hyun said quietly. We have been picking up signs of movement. The Nexus is waking up. It is hungry. And now humanity lives in the same galaxy as a sleeping monster. Minjae felt cold. He understood what this meant. Humanity had lived on Earth, believing they were safe, not knowing that danger was sleeping just outside their door. He knew he had to tell others about this, but he also knew that people would not believe him. Who would believe such an incredible story? That was when Jiho came back. She had been thinking about what she had seen, about the beings in the ship. She wanted to know the truth. When she learned about the Nexus, she was not afraid. She was angry. She was determined. We can prepare, Jiho said. We can learn to fight. You have no weapons for a fight like this, Hyun told her. Then we will learn, Jiho answered. Minjae and Jiho made a plan. They could not tell the government immediately. The government would either not believe them or they would try to capture Taejun and Hyun, and that would be a mistake. Instead, they would build a small team of people they could trust. They would start learning about Confederacy technology. They would prepare in secret. A woman named Yeon-hee worked in the military as a strategist. She was smart and brave, and Jiho trusted her completely. Minjae and Jiho told her the truth. At first, Yeon-hee could not believe it. But Taejun showed her recordings from the Confederacy. He showed her pictures of the stars they had visited. He showed her information about the Nexus. Yan-He understood that this was real, and she understood that humanity needed to be ready. If we go to war with this Nexus, Yan-He said, we will lose. We do not have the technology. We do not have the experience. But if we work with the Confederacy, if we combine human thinking with alien technology, we might have a chance. The weeks passed slowly. Taijin worked on their ship, and with help from Minjae and the others, they made repairs. But he did not leave. He stayed on Earth because he wanted to understand these people better. He wanted to understand why they fought so hard, why they never gave up, why they felt things so deeply. One night, Taijin asked Minjae a question. Why are humans so different from us? Why do you feel and we do not? Minjae smiled. Maybe you forgot how to feel, he said. Maybe you became so smart that you forgot about your hearts. We are young. We still have our hearts. We still feel joy and fear and hope and love. Maybe that is our strength, not our weakness. Taijin thought about this. It was true. Humans were young. They were not as advanced as the Confederacy. But they had something that the older species had lost. They had the courage to try impossible things. They had the hope that they could win even when the odds were against them. It was time to contact the Confederacy. It was time to tell them that humanity existed and that humanity was ready to fight. Commander Heian sent a message into space, and she waited for an answer. She did not know if the Confederacy would help them. She did not know if they would even believe that humans could be valuable allies. But she knew one thing. The clock was running out. The Nexus was waking up, and soon everyone would need to choose whether to fight or to die. The message from Commander Heian traveled through space at the speed of light. It took weeks to reach the Confederacy, but when it arrived, it caused chaos. Taijin had gone to the Forbidden Galaxy and discovered a new species. That was one thing. But now the Confederacy had to make a choice. Should they ignore the warning and hope the Nexus stayed asleep? Or should they take a risk and help this young, primitive species prepare for war? The Valorian Senate argued for days. Some leaders wanted to send help to humanity. Others wanted to seal off Andromeda again, even if it meant abandoning the humans to their fate. But Commander Heian sent another message. She told them about human strength, about human courage, about the ways that humans could think differently than aliens. She told them that humans might be young, but they were not weak. Finally, the Senate agreed to send help. A large ship from the Confederacy came to Earth. It brought technology, weapons, and knowledge. It also brought something else. It brought hope. The Confederacy was willing to fight alongside humanity. They were willing to try. On Earth, Minjae worked with the Confederacy scientists to understand their technology. He discovered something amazing. Humans did not build machines the way aliens did. Humans built machines with flexibility and the ability to change. Aliens built machines that were perfect but could not adapt. When Minjae combined human thinking with Confederacy technology, something new happened. The machines became better. They became stronger. An engineer named Daesung was brought into the secret project. Daesung was young but brilliant. He had always believed that human engineering was just as good as anything else. When he saw Confederacy technology, he did not just copy it. He looked at it and asked, "How can I make this better?" He studied for days and nights, barely sleeping. He drew plans and built models. Finally, he created something that had never existed before. A weapon that used both human creativity and alien science. It was called the hybrid cannon. It was more powerful than any weapon the Confederacy had ever made. "How is this possible?" Taijin asked Daesung when he saw the weapon. Daesung smiled. "We think differently," he said. "You aliens design things to be perfect. We humans design things to solve problems. Sometimes solving problems is better than being perfect." But while they were building weapons, the Nexus was getting closer. Every day reports came in about Nexus creatures destroying Confederacy stations at the edge of Andromeda. Entire colonies that had existed for thousands of years disappeared in a single day. The Nexus was not just a threat anymore. It was a reality. It was coming and nothing could stop it. The United Nations of Earth met in secret. World leaders listened to Jiho and Yan-He explain the situation. At first, many of them did not believe the story. But when they saw the pictures from space, when they saw the Confederacy ships and the proof that aliens were real, they understood. They made a decision. Humanity would go to war. The news spread slowly at first. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and ordinary people began to understand that humanity was not alone in the universe. More than that, humanity had a chance to prove itself to the galaxy. Young people volunteered to join the military. Scientists worked longer hours. Engineers built faster. Everyone wanted to help save their world. Tajin became a teacher. He spent his days showing humans how to use Confederacy weapons and technology. He was amazed by how quickly humans learned. They asked questions. They found shortcuts. They invented new ways to use the technology that the Confederacy had never thought of. In just a few months, humans had learned what usually took aliens years to master. A young boy named Jiwoo, only 10 years old, came to watch Tajin work one day. Jiwoo had followed his father to the research center. He was small and curious, asking questions about everything. One day he asked Tajin a simple question. "Why do we use fire to hurt the Nexus?" Jiwoo asked. "Fire burns things, but the Nexus is already alive. It does not die from fire. What if we treated it like a sickness instead? What if we used medicine?" Tajin stopped what he was doing. He looked at the small human boy. What Jiwoo had said was simple, but it was brilliant. The Confederacy had never thought of the Nexus as a disease. They thought of it as an enemy, as something to fight. But Jiwoo was right. Maybe the Nexus could be treated like an invading species, like an infection that could be cured. Minjae took Jiwoo's idea and worked with Confederacy scientists to develop a biological weapon. It would not destroy the Nexus. Instead, it would break the connection between the different creatures of the Nexus. It would make them separate, individual, weak. It would cure the sickness. But creating this weapon took time, and time was running out. News came that the Nexus had reached the inner systems of Andromeda. The final battle was coming. All the species of the Confederacy gathered their armies. All the humans who had trained gathered their weapons. They all moved toward a place called the Andromeda Gate, where they would make their last stand. Commander Haeun and Jiho stood together in the command center, looking at the star maps. They could see the Nexus coming like a giant wave. They could see the small ships of the Confederacy and the even smaller ships of humanity, lined up against the darkness. "Are we ready?" Jiho asked. Haeun looked at her friend. She thought about Taijin, who had risked everything to help them. She thought about Minjae and Daesung and Jiwoo and all the humans who had learned and fought and believed that they could win against impossible odds. "No," Haeun answered honestly. "We are not ready, but we will fight anyway. Because sometimes fighting is all we can do, and sometimes fighting is enough." The two commanders looked out at the stars. In the darkness, something was moving. The Nexus was almost here. The final test was about to begin. Humanity, the young species from the Forbidden Galaxy, was about to show the universe what they were made of. The battle began at dawn, though there was no sun in space to bring the dawn. But the warriors in both fleets felt the weight of a beginning. Thousands of ships lined up across the darkness. On one side, the combined forces of the Confederacy and Earth. On the other side, something that had no shape, no form that could be easily described. The Nexus came like a swarm of locusts, like a disease spreading through flesh, like death itself. Jiho sat in the cockpit of her fighter plane. She had been given the rank of admiral, but she still preferred to fly her own ship. Her radio crackled with the voices of human and alien pilots, all checking their weapons, all ready to fight. She thought about Taijun in the command ship, about Minjae in the research center, about all the people who had worked so hard to get them to this moment. "All units, prepare for combat," Jiho said into her radio. "Remember your training. Remember what we are fighting for." The Nexus creatures came like a wave. They were not ships in the traditional sense. They were living things, biomechanical organisms that had no faces and no names. They could change shape and multiply and attack from any direction. They came by the thousands, then by the millions. The sky filled with fire and explosions. Human pilots and alien pilots fought side by side. This was something that had never happened before in the galaxy. Humans, with their quick reflexes and their ability to think on their feet, found ways to kill enemies that aliens had not thought of. Aliens, with their advanced technology and years of experience, protected humans when they were in danger. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. Daesung's hybrid cannon worked perfectly. It fired at the Nexus swarm, and entire waves of creatures fell out of the sky. But the Nexus kept coming. For every creature that died, 10 more took its place. The battle went on for hours, then for days. Ships exploded. Warriors died. Both sides lost so much that the darkness of space seemed to fill with tears. Tejan watched the battle from the command ship, but he was not just watching. He was thinking, planning, looking for a weakness in the Nexus. He looked at the data from thousands of weapons, from thousands of sensors, and finally he saw something. The Nexus was not as strong as it seemed. The connection between all the creatures, the thing that made them one single mind, was fragile. If they could hit it at the right place at the right time, they might be able to break it. But hitting that place meant flying into the very center of the Nexus. It meant flying into the darkness, into the place where the creatures were most concentrated. It meant almost certain death. "We need someone to go to the center," Tejan said to Commander Hyun. "Someone needs to deploy the biological weapon there. Someone needs to break the connection." Hyun looked at him. She knew what he was asking. "You volunteer," she said. "Yes," Tejan answered. "I brought this danger to the galaxy. I should be the one to stop it." "No," a voice said from behind them. It was Jiho. She had come back to the command ship after a battle, her face covered in dirt and sweat. "I will go. I am a human. I am the fastest pilot here. I will get there and back. You will die," Hyun said quietly. "Maybe," Jiho answered. "But if I do not go, we all die. My people, your people, everyone dies. At least this way we try." Jiho and Tejan looked at each other. They had become friends in the months of preparation. They had learned each other's languages, eaten food from each other's worlds, and shared their dreams and fears. Now they had to go together into the darkness, knowing that they might not come back. They went to the modified human ship, a small craft that had been built with both human and Confederacy technology. Daesung had made sure it was fast and strong. Jiho and Tejan got inside and started the engines. Behind them, the fleet tried to push the Nexus back to give them time. The ship flew forward. The creatures of the Nexus turned toward them, drawn by the unfamiliar technology, drawn by the presence of something new. They attacked like 1,000 hungry mouths, but the ship was fast. Jiho flew through openings that seemed too small. She moved in ways that seemed impossible. Tejan held the biological weapon, ready to deploy it at the exact moment when they reached the center of the Nexus. "There," Tejan shouted, pointing at a place deep inside the swarm where something pulsed with light. It was the heart of the Nexus, the place where all the connections came together. It was the mind of the enemy. Jiho flew toward it. The creatures attacked harder. Parts of the ship started to break. Alarms screamed inside the cockpit. But they kept going. They had come too far to stop. They had promised too many people that they would fight, and then they were there. At the center of everything, Tejan deployed the biological weapon. The effect was immediate. The connection between the Nexus creatures began to break. The single mind that controlled them all started to split into many smaller minds. The creatures stopped moving as one. They turned on each other. They no longer knew what they were supposed to do, but the ship was damaged. Very damaged. Jiho tried to turn it around, but the engines were not responding. They were going to fall into the darkness. They were not going to make it back. "I am sorry," Taejun said to Jiho. "I am sorry that I brought you into this." Jiho smiled. "Do not be sorry," she said. "I chose this. I chose to fight. And we won. Look outside." Outside, the Nexus was falling apart. The creatures were scattered and confused. The fleets of the Confederacy and Earth were pushing them back, destroying them, finally defeating an enemy that had seemed invincible. "We won," Jiho repeated. "We actually won." But as the ship fell deeper into the darkness, both of them thought they were going to die. Then lights appeared. Other ships, a rescue team. Commander Hyun had sent her best pilots to find them. They caught the falling ship and brought it safely back to the command vessel. When the door opened, Jiho and Taejun stumbled out, exhausted and hurt, but alive. Minjae was there waiting for them. So was Hyun, so was Daesung. They had won. Against all the odds, they had won. The battle was not completely over. There were still scattered creatures to fight, but the main Nexus was defeated. Its mind was broken. It would never threaten the galaxy again. The creatures would eventually become separate, individual organisms no longer dangerous. The threat that had haunted the Confederacy for 10,000 years was finally gone. Jiho and Taejun sat together in the medical area of the command ship, getting their wounds treated. They did not say much. They just sat together, two warriors from different worlds who had saved the galaxy by working together. Neither one of them knew what would happen next. Neither one of them knew how the universe would change because of what they had done. But they both knew one thing: they would never forget this moment. They would never forget the day that humanity and the Confederacy stood together against the darkness and won. 6 months after the battle, the galaxy was still healing. The dead were honored. The wounded were recovering. The damaged ships and space stations were being repaired. But something else was happening too. Something was changing, not just in the physical world but in the minds of every being who lived among the stars. Tejan stood in the Senate Hall of the Confederacy. All around him were representatives from the 5 alien species that made up this ancient government. They were looking at him, listening to him, waiting to hear what he had to say. He had once been a simple probe technician. Now he was the ambassador of humanity to the entire galaxy. "The war against the Nexus has shown us something important," Tejan said to the Senate. "For 10,000 years we ran from our fear. We locked away a galaxy and pretended it did not exist. We lost our courage. We lost our ability to hope that we could face darkness and win. Humanity is young. They have only lived for a few thousand years as a thinking species. But they have something that we forgot. They have the courage to fight when others would give up. They have the hope to believe in victory when the odds say they should lose. They have the ability to feel, to care, to sacrifice for others. We locked away this galaxy to hide from the Nexus, but we were hiding from something else. We were hiding from ourselves, from what we could become if we were brave enough to try." The Senate was quiet for a long time. Then one by one they voted. The decision was unanimous. Andromeda would no longer be a forbidden zone. It would be a place of cooperation and learning. Humanity would be welcomed into the Confederacy, not as servants but as equals. They would have a voice in the government. They would have a place among the stars. Jiho had left the military. She could not go back to being a simple pilot after everything that had happened. Instead, she became the admiral of the combined fleet, a force made up of human and alien warriors working together to protect the entire galaxy. Her first act was to create a memorial for all the beings, human and alien, who had died in the war against the Nexus. The memorial stood on a space station in the center of Andromeda, where everyone could see it and remember what they had fought for. Minjay created the Institute of Cross-Species Innovation. Scientists from every species came to work there. Humans brought their creativity and their ability to find new solutions to old problems. Aliens brought their advanced knowledge and their years of experience. Together, they made discoveries that neither could have made alone. They learned about medicine, engineering, physics, and biology. They learned about art and music and literature. Each species taught the others something new. Dae-sung led the engineering division of the Institute. His hybrid cannon had become the most famous weapon in the galaxy, but he did not stop there. He continued to create new things, new combinations of human and alien technology. Other engineers from the Confederacy came to learn from him. They studied his methods. They watched how he thought about problems differently than they did. Many of them went back to their home worlds and began to teach others the human way of thinking about engineering. On Earth, things were changing too. The Secret Research Center became a public university, one of the most famous schools in the galaxy. Young humans studied Confederacy science and technology. Young aliens came to Earth to study human art, music, and history. Students from different worlds lived together, learned together, and became friends. They grew up knowing that the universe was full of different kinds of life, and that all of these different kinds of life could work together and create something beautiful. Jiwoo, the young boy who had suggested the biological weapon idea, became a famous scientist. He studied the Nexus, trying to understand how a species could become so disconnected from emotion and individuality. He wanted to make sure that what had happened to the Nexus could never happen to anyone else. His work helped the Confederacy understand mental health and the importance of emotion, even in a scientific and logical society. Years passed. The young warriors who had fought in the war became older. Jiho trained new pilots and new soldiers. Tejan wrote books about the history of the first contact between humans and the Confederacy. Minjay gave lectures all across the galaxy about the importance of curiosity and how it had saved them all. Dae-sung worked with young engineers, showing them that there was no one right way to solve a problem, that different ways of thinking could combine to make something better than anyone had imagined. But the most important change was not in any of these people. The most important change was in how the galaxy thought about itself. The Confederacy was no longer a fearful society that locked away the unknown. It was a society that welcomed new ideas and new ways of thinking. It was a society that understood that strength came not from being perfect, but from working together with others who thought differently. One day, Jiho took Minjae and Taejin back to Earth. They stood on a mountain, looking down at the planet that had changed everything. Minjae looked at his old home, the place where he had lived his whole life not knowing that aliens existed. Now, he lived among the stars. He traveled to different worlds. He worked with beings from other galaxies, but Earth would always be his home. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Taejin asked. "When we decided to help humanity, when we decided to work together." "Yes," Jiho answered without hesitation. "Look what we did. Look what we created together." A young human child and a young alien child were playing on the grass below them. They were friends. They did not even think about the fact that they came from different worlds. They just played and laughed and had fun together. To them, it was normal. To them, the universe was full of friends and everyone worked together to make it a better place. "This is the future," Minjae said, pointing at the two children. "They will grow up never knowing a time when we were separated. They will not understand fear of the unknown. They will see the darkness of space and think only about how much they want to explore it, how much they want to discover. They will be braver than we were." "Braver and kinder," Taejin smiled. He thought about his first day on Earth when he had crashed and thought he might die. He had not known then that this planet and its people would change his life, would change the entire galaxy, would change everything. But looking at the children below, he understood. Sometimes the smallest actions led to the biggest changes. Sometimes curiosity was the most powerful force in the universe, and sometimes the creatures that seemed the weakest and the youngest turned out to be the strongest and the wisest. The three friends stood together on the mountain, watching the sun set over Earth. Somewhere in space, new ships were being built. Somewhere in the galaxy, scientists were making new discoveries. Somewhere, young people were training to explore the stars. The galaxy was changing, growing, becoming something new. The age of fear was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and it had all started with one curious probe technician who wondered about a signal in the darkness, and one brave pilot who had the courage to follow a strange ship into the sky. The universe had been lonely for so long. Now it was full of friends, and everyone looked forward to what tomorrow would bring.